It's time for Security Now. Steve Gibson is here. What a great show ahead. Questions, answers. We'll talk more about Prism, more insight there. You got to stay tuned. This is the show to keep your privacy and security up. Security Now is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Audio bandwidth for Security Now is provided by the new Winamp for Android, featuring wireless sync and one-click iTunes import. Now with free daily music downloads and full-length CD listening parties. Download it for free at winamp.com/Android. Video bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson. Episode 409, recorded June 19th, 2013. Your questions, Steve's answers, number 170. Security Now is brought to you by Carbonite. Automatically and continually back up your computer files to the cloud whenever your computer is connected to the internet for only $59 a year. Try it free at Carbonite.com and use the offer code SecurityNow to get 2 bonus months with purchase. And by ProXPN. ProXPN is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymously and without oversight. For 20% off your new account, go to proxpn.com/twit and use the offer code SN20. It's time for Security Now, the post-NSA edition. Steve Gibson is here, our explainer-in-chief, the guy who does all the security and privacy and is really our guru in that realm. Hello, Steve. Good to see you.
Hey, Leo. Great to be with you again. And we have largely, as expected, a follow-up to last week's blockbuster theory of how Prism works, as I expected. Actually, I probably had double the number of email that I normally pull from the mailbag, which would have only been in half of the period of time. So strong response. I've never had a response as evidenced on Twitter like we had to last week's episode. So, a lot of people who, our typical listener who understands the technology that we talked about and we talk about every week understood this. So. And actually, another document surfaced. I have a link to it in the notes today, but it's from this Narus company, which was originally an Israeli company that produced the high-performance networking filter hardware that I referred to last week. I tracked them down after the show, and one of the second page of their brochure shows a prism as it's like, okay, yeah, that's a little too coincidental.
Well, I've seen a number of articles that kind of seem to somewhat confirm from the Washington Post and Declan McCullough writing at CNET kind of confirm your hypothesis, and I've seen nothing to negate it.
Right.
So,
So anyway,
it was interesting because Apple put out a statement. I don't know if you're going to. Well, let's save this.
We do discuss Apple's statement, and actually, unfortunately, how weak it actually is, given the evidence that they're able to provide iMessages in the backlog after the fact. So, anyway, we'll talk about that.
Before we do, very apropos, let's talk about protecting yourself online and protecting your privacy and security online. Couldn't be a better time to use VPN, a virtual private network, and ProXPN is the way to do it. It is an open VPN solution, so it works. It's good. Steve endorses OpenVPN. These days, with governments and ISPs wanting to control what you see and don't see, keeping a record of everything you do, and then the free Wi-Fi at the coffee house and the hotel and the airport that lets everybody see what you do, not just the feds. Perhaps even intercepting passwords and sensitive data. I think it's time to encrypt your tunnel. Put your data through a private encrypted tunnel back to the ProXPN servers so nobody can spy on what you do. And then at ProXPN's end, you can choose where your data emerges because ProXPN has servers all over the world. So you can, choose the U.S., the U.K., and Asia and more for your exit point onto the public internet. So I think that's really a good idea. And it has some additional benefits because if you do that, you also can choose what geographic restrictions you are subject to. So servers in Dallas, Seattle, London, Singapore, Los Angeles, New York City, and Amsterdam pretty much guarantee that any content you want to watch, you can watch regardless of geographic restrictions. It looks like you're in those cities. It protects you against your ISP, too, even at home. That 6 strikes rule, they can't see what you're doing. Uses OpenVPN, as I said, or if you're on a mobile device that doesn't support it, and some don't now, PPTP, your choice. Any online application will work with ProXPN, including your web browser, your email, your file sharing, your instant messaging programs. ProXPN keeps everything you do online hidden from prying eyes, disguising your physical location and giving you unfettered access to any website or online service, no matter where you live or where you travel to. It's really good for travelers. iOS, Android, world-class customer support. Now, they have free accounts. Certainly worth a try if you want to see if you like it. But for the best results, of course, you're going to want the premium account. Now, normally, that's $9.95 a month, $75 if you buy an entire year. But we've got a special offer, a Security Now offer for our listeners. Use the offer code SN20, SN for Security Now, 20 for 20% off, not just for the first month, year, for the lifetime of your account. That means if you buy an annual plan, it's less than $5 a month. Wow. And, of course, if you're not satisfied, cancel within 7 days for a full refund. So there's no problem. ProXPN.com/twit. Use the offer code SN20. Protect yourself online. Protect your privacy. Do you know, Steve, and I should probably look through this, what they log or don't log at ProXPN?
I have not looked into it.
Because that would be germane as well. If they don't, and we'll talk about this with the Apple thing. If nothing's being logged, it's a little harder for people to, even if they find the exit point, to figure out what you're up to.
Yeah, I think my focus was that they are an OpenVPN server,
which we like.
and
yeah.
we know the technology of OpenVPN.
Yeah.
And some people have asked which security and privacy laws they follow, and the answer was they follow the laws of the server to which you connect, of the laws of the country of where the server resides.
Right.
So that's that aspect of it.
So if you choose Amsterdam, you've got the Dutch laws. If you choose London, you've got the UK laws. That kind of thing.
Yep.
Singapore. All right, ProXPN.com/twit. Give it a try today. Strongly recommended. It's a Dutch company, by the way. So you don't. I think that they probably have a somewhat different attitude towards Privacy, like better.
Yeah. As in better.
As in better. Logs. Okay. Cowboyzone says logs are kept for 2 weeks and deleted. That's what you want. That's exactly what you want. ProXPN.com/twit.
And that probably means they're keeping logs only for technical support reasons.
Right. If you call up and say,
if you're saying, hey, I keep getting disconnected, then they're able to go in and dig around and see if they can figure out why in order to help you, as opposed to narc on you.
That's good.
So inevitably, we were going to see some jokes arise from the NSA.
That's how you know something's serious. Seriously,
Yes,
when something's
exactly.
there's a guy named Jan Brunner, who's an expert on urban, those jokes cycles, like the remember the elephant in your refrigerator, the dead baby, all of these joke cycles. And I interviewed him once, and he said, it's always the most taboo subject. So the dead baby jokes were right about when the abortion debate was raging in this country. And so it's a way of handling very taboo subjects in a way that is not incendiary, but lets some of the steam off. And so, of course,
exactly, it sort of allows the sort of the pressure off of.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
So my absolute favorite actually was a photo that my tech support guy Greg sent me, and it was a photo of a distraught looking woman, and across the top it said, "My computer's hard drive crashed ... And then at the bottom, and this explains why she's unhappy, and the NSA won't send me their backup copy.
What backup? What do you? What?
I like that. Then we have another one.
Yeah.
An NSA agent walks into his favorite bar.
Yeah.
The bartender says, "Hey, I've got a joke for you."
Yeah.
The NSA guy replies, "I already heard it." It's like, okay.
Excellent. I love it. I already heard it.
Okay, and then we have crypto humor, NSA crypto humor. Why didn't Edward Snowden ever go back to his Hong Kong hotel room to avoid the NSA?
Why?
It was a one-time pad.
As it should be. If you're Edward Snowden, never sleep in the same bed twice.
Exactly.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent.
So that's our humor, our opening podcast humor, consequence of last week's certainly less than humorous disclosures and our theory about the way things may be working. In security news, it was a very quiet week. I think everybody's still in shock. No one's doing anything, good or bad, except that Oracle had no choice but to release a critical patch update for Java. This fixes 40 new security problems. 37 of these are remotely exploitable without authentication. And Oracle recommends, reading from their release news, that this critical patch update be applied as soon as possible because it includes fixes for a number of severe vulnerabilities. Note that the vulnerabilities fixed in this critical patch update affect various components and, as a result, may not affect the security posture of all Java users in the same way. So,
posture as in bend over?
As in why, when there was a link like, check your current version. So I thought, okay, I wonder what I have. And of course, Firefox said, you have no evidence of Java. It's like, yes.
Oh, good news.
That's what we want. We have no current version.
No version.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I was disappointed to see that I got a new Mac. And I was disappointed to see that Safari by default, happy to see Safari by default blocks third-party cookies. By default does not give you the what is that setting that we like? Do not track setting. It's off by default.
Right.
And unfortunately, Java's on by default. But Apple has a very good policy, which is if you don't use it, it turns it off, and before you can run it, it says, "Are you sure you want to run it?" So I guess it's probably all right to leave it on, but I turn it off.
Yeah. The problem, of course, is that people who don't know will just say, "Oh, yeah." They just click yes in order to move on to what they want, and that's how they get owned in this day and age. There was a piece in Foreign Policy, the Foreign Policy website. I think our friend Simon Zarafa pointed me to it. Mm-hmm. And first, I was just going to give it a synopsis, but as I began to read it, in order to figure out how I would pull out from it, I thought, wow, this is just all good stuff. So I'm going to share it with our listeners. That the title is "The Suddenly Booming Business of Secretive Communications." And of course, the reason this is relevant is what has been the upshot of the revelations a week and a half ago. So the article reads, "For anyone in the habit of wearing a tinfoil hat, the last couple of weeks have been ones of redemption. With a steady stream of revelations about the National Security Agency's astonishingly broad intelligence gathering activities, conspiracy theories about its reach have been seemingly validated. Those same raise a related question. Are there ways to avoid the NSA's prying eyes? It turns out there are, for the most part anyway, and for the companies selling communication tools to circumvent surveillance programs, business is going like gangbusters. Silent Circle, a company that provides encrypted email, phone, and messaging services, has seen sales increase 400% so far this month. You can now take advantage of a 50% discount on its full suite of services. Moxie Marlinspike, the hacker and developer behind Whisper Systems, another purveyor of encrypted communications tools, says his service has seen a 3,000% increase in its new active user rate since June 6th, when the story about the NSA's Prism program first broke, though he did not offer specifics about the numbers of users the company has signed up. CryptoCat, a free encrypted chat service, which was, of course, the topic of this podcast a couple weeks ago, welcomed almost 5,000 new users last week, and server traffic is currently running 80% above average for its 65,000 regular users, according to Nadim Kobeisi, the site's lead developer. And Tor, a web browser, as this site describes it, and we know what Tor is actually, a network, anonymizing network, that protects its users from so-called traffic analysis, has seen a 17% increase in its mean daily usage in the United States. The number of users now approaching 90,000. Quote, "We are running around with our hair on fire. It's insane," said Silent Circle CEO Mike Janke to Foreign Policy. Utilizing a peer-to-peer encryption tool, Silent Circle's communication tools, which include everything from email to text messaging to video conferencing, promise near anonymity on the web. In layman's terms, these services scramble your communications with users using a similar encryption protocol, turning your message into a bunch of gibberish for the NSA analyst to listen in. Silent Circle's offerings are part of a burgeoning movement online to ensure user anonymity and prevent privacy breaches. But tools such as encrypted email can only do so much to fight back against the NSA. In recent years, encryption technology has become so advanced that the agency has largely moved away from using brute force decryption methods, that is, leveraging an immense amount of computer power to unlock a given encryption algorithm, and instead has adopted traffic analysis methods, according to Janke. This is the Silent Circle CEO guy. As part of this new approach, the NSA scoops up immense troves of a given type of communication and tries to spot patterns in the usage of those exchanges. That technique, known as traffic analysis, allows the agency to establish connections between people and groups on the internet. And by identifying its targets in the morass of messages, the NSA can map a given target's entire social network. That information can often be more valuable than the content of the message itself. And to pause here for a second, and of course we noted, and I think mostly it was after we stopped recording last week, Leo, you reiterated more strongly, and I thought made the very good point that the reason the NSA is sitting there tapping the communications of these major providers is they all know who their customers are, even if the NSA can't see it because it's encrypted, but they can see the patterns. Then the NSA can go to the provider saying, well, we know this is a customer of yours because this went down your pipe at such and such a time, so we need to know who that is. And then they can go to the warranted full disclosure on a targeted basis rather than just the wholesale sweeping of content. Many people saying, well, it's encrypted, so what? Anyway, just to wrap this up, it says, all this means that encryption tools like those offered by Silent Circle are only a first step, a reality that Janke fully acknowledged, and that email is particularly vulnerable to NSA snooping. Due to the physics of email, I'm quoting somebody, due to the physics of email, how a server needs to take that data and send it down to someone else, it's Janke again, saying it is vulnerable to metadata and it hangs around forever. Janke said, referring to secondary data, the contents of the to and from fields, say, or routing information, and so forth. Anyway, so I thought that it was interesting that here we're seeing in the popular press, first of all, we've seen what we would expect, which is a massive rush to adopt these technologies more so than previously. I mean, they're out there, they exist, but people are like, oh, well, I'm really not sure that I need it. Suddenly, hundreds of % increases in actual usage by people who really want to be secure. And I ran across one that looks very nice called Threema, Threema. It really looks like they've done this right. It's a secure instant messaging, not quite support for BlackBerry yet, but it is multi-platform, and BlackBerry support is reputed to be coming. So that's a nice thing. But the other thing I thought was interesting was that that they're recognizing that it's possible to leverage traffic analysis, much as I talked about last week when I was trying to say, wait a minute, it's not like the metadata is not useful. It's incredibly useful. So, notwithstanding the various attempts to minimize its impact that we saw from the various people, the politicians who were the talking heads last week. And I thought this was interesting. For those who aren't following me on Twitter, there is a Bitly a Bitly link I created. Leo, you might want to bring this up just to look at the top right of the second page. It's bit.ly/SN408, which is the Security Now episode number last week, and all lowercase, and then N, as in Narus, Narus, which is the company which we're almost certain. Well, we know for sure that they were the traffic analysis provider years ago in the secret NSA room at the AT&T building at 611 Folsom Street in San Francisco. There's every reason to believe that relationship has continued, and in fact, they're now a subsidiary of Boeing.
I like this Prism.
Yes, there's the Prism.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Network traffic beam, split it into 3 planes.
Yep.
I mean, that's not really what's going on with our Prism, but
no. And in fact, I think actually it's probably a half silvered mirror. I don't know exactly how a fiber optic beam splitter works, but I would think it would be they'd be using a partially silvered mirror so that half the photons bounce off, half go straight through, and so it actually is a beam splitter rather than a prism. But prism splits a light into different frequencies, and here it is in the Narus brochure. It's like, oh, okay,
you first page.
It'll be a little more subtle, maybe.
You know that Prism thing? Yeah, we invented it.
Exactly.
That's funny. That's funny.
I did want to make a mention just to tie this up because I mentioned it in the past on the podcast. I did finally the BlackBerry I was waiting for, the Q10, which is the keyboarded version of the Z10, got into the stores, and I owned it for 2 days.
2 days?
And I returned it.
You lasted longer than I did. You got a Q, though. That's the one with a physical keyboard.
Well, and I know what they did, and unfortunately, they've ruined the BlackBerry now. So I doubled down. I got myself a second pull 9930 Verizon Unlocked just so I have a spare. Because this is probably
you nuts. You crazy.
Hey, wait a minute. How many MacBook Airs do you have?
Well, I get one. I get the new one. I get the latest. Not. I'm not putting old MacBook Airs in the freezer. You crack me up. That's hysterical.
What they did was they of course they said, okay, everybody's going touch, so we're going to do that, and so they designed a new OS that no longer required the hard keys that the original BlackBerry has always had. I mean, the very, very old BlackBerries, you'll remember, they had like a scroll wheel on the side, and you could scroll and then push in order to select and then enter.
That's how the pagers worked. I loved that.
Oh, it's a beautiful interface.
It was a good system.
One-handed, thank you very much. And then a menuing system's design. The point is, yes, there's some learning curve, but the flip side is once you have learned it, it's the best thing there is. I mean, it's the answer. And that's what you want in a communications device you're going to be using, essentially, plugged into your spinal cord in the way you want to operate. So instead, they said, oh, well, we need touch. They had that awful first attempt to do touch where this whole screen kind of clicked in. It's like, oh, goodness, no. So then they have the Z10, which required them to design a UI that no longer needed the little. First, we went from the scroll wheel, then we went to a trackball, then to a trackpad, where you go, you have cursor positioning up, down, left, right, and then you push in to select, or you've got a back arrow. And then you've got a couple hard buttons for like answer the phone, hang up the phone, and so forth. All that's gone. Everything's now touch. And it's awful. I've lived with it. I learned it. I lived with it for 2 days, and I brought it back. Yeah. And I said, here, hook my old one up. It's better than this. Oh, and it wouldn't do the way I was able to get out of it, although I didn't really have to have an excuse. It would not allow me to have distinctive tones for my various conversations. Anytime that, Jenny is sending me email or text messages, there's a Jenny sound. And my best friend Mark, there's a Mark sound. And we know that there's yabba dabba doo. All of that is text messaging. They've lost the ability to set up individual ringtones, essentially, for those. Yeah. Believe it or not. It's not there. And it's hugely controversial on the net that it won't do that. And I said, well, it won't do that. And they said, oh, of course it will. Well, they couldn't make it work either.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
I don't know. Get an Android phone. You might actually like it.
No, I'm done.
I know you want a keyboard, but...
I need a keyboard.
No more touch, he says.
And I want real buttons. I'm sticking with what I've got. So many times, look at Windows 7 compared to 8. They get it right, and then they just can't leave it alone. Yeah. And we've talked about this. They have to keep up.
That's true. They have to put fins.
Yeah.
You're right. Or you won't buy a new one.
Now, I just want to do a shout out to all the great listeners who sent me news from this morning of the fact that Canada needs PDP-11 programmers.
Okay. Why?
Turns out their nuclear reactors have robotic systems running on PDP-11s.
Not a surprise.
And they're going to until 2050. 2050.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. And
of course, you can't fix it because nobody knows how to write software for it.
No one knows how to program it anymore. Right. So it's like, okay, just leave it alone. But I guess maybe they do need to add some features, or God help them, they
probably code fixes. Maybe they want to get it ready for the year 2000.
Well, so they're looking for PDP-11 programmers who can also train several, because they're saying 2050 is several generations of programmers.
Yeah, kids being born today will need to know how to write code for PDP-11.
Now, I figure if I keep taking this level of supplements that I am,
it's only 37 more years, Steve.
I'm going to be there.
You'll be 90. It's good.
I want that. When they decommission those, I want those PDP-11s so I can get a bigger refrigerator.
Now, what language are we talking? It's not assembler.
Yes, specifically stated assembly language programming.
Oh, but that was, as you said, a very nice orthogonal instruction set, simple.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's a beautiful instruction set.
They should learn it. They should learn it.
Yeah, I have PDP-11 so that I can spend some time programming.
I know you do. That's what those blinking lights are back there.
Oh, those are 8s.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Oh, how could I be so stupid?
Yeah, we got these are 3 later.
You should send them a note. Do you need any 8 programmers? We're not dead yet.
And we already talked about it. I had notes here. We already talked about Man of Steel. Without a spoiler, and this doesn't spoil anything, I loved the first 3 quarters of it, and I just was annoyed with the latter 3 quarters.
I'm exactly with you. I felt like I was watching Transformers 3 or 4.
Yes, it was really it was ridiculous. Yeah. So
did you catch all the? And this is not a spoiler either. All the and I guess this is not unusual. It was in Superman Returns too. All the kind of crypto Christian. He's 33 years old. He emerges like this. There was, in fact, apparently in the early days of Superman, the first Superman that Schuster and Kane were writing, his mother's name was Mary. They changed that to Martha. But there's as I'm watching it, I'm going, wow, more. And then at one point, General Zod says, I am evolution. This is evolution will win. And Superman responds by punching him out. So it was kind of interesting. I don't know what it means. And it was apparently even stronger in Superman Returns, which I missed. But Superman is a god after all, right? And they say that over and over again.
Watch Superman Returns. It's got a fabulous opening sequence. Yeah. Oh, goodness. I mean, I've watched it like 7 times. It's just wonderful.
I do love, and I'm with you, and I think you and I
love
might
the
be
mythology.
but you and I might be in the small minority because a lot of people didn't like Superman. The people who liked Superman didn't like Man of Steel as much. I liked how it was shot. I liked the grittiness of it. It feels like the film was processed. It's very grainy.
Yes, I agree. I thought it was. I liked everything about it until this ridiculous extended battle scene. It's like, okay.
They could have left that out. I have to.
And also it made a huge amount of money. It was $125 million.
Very big opening weekend. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Iron Man 3, which was also ridiculously violent in the same way, was similar. So maybe that's what they have to do now in order to cross the $1 million threshold.
People want it's kids.
It is.
It's not us old farts. It's young people. They want all of the action.
Yeah, I'm going to completely miss Pacific Rim. I am not. That doesn't even get in. I'm not even going to try.
It looks like a lot of blowing things up on that one. Yeah.
It is actually just Transformers, robot controlled Transformers.
Yeah, right.
It'll sell in Japan, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've never been a fan of comic book movies. I have to say I liked Man of Steel, and I liked how they handled the backstory. I didn't even. People complained about the first 40 minutes on Kryptonite and Krypton, and I actually liked that
it was
stuff.
wonderful.
I thought that was quite good.
Yes.
Yeah, but you and I are the only ones, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, I got a neat tweet from someone who said, Steve, I would normally thank you for the fact that I've lost 50 pounds and have kept it off.
All right.
And he's, of course, referring to getting rid of starch from his diet. He said, however, mostly I want to thank you for Justified.
Justified? What was that?
It's the
show. Yeah.
It's the series on FX.
Love it.
Which I turned a bunch of people onto, and they're like, oh, my goodness. I mean, it is really excellent.
Yeah.
So I have another one. I just finished watching the first 2 seasons of this in a multi-day marathon. They're both out on disc. I bought the DVD, the Blu-ray on the first season, the DVD the second season, but of course you can get them wherever you get your media. And this is an AMC production called The Killing.
Oh yeah, that's whew.
Oh, Leo.
Yeah. That's free on Amazon Prime for people. I bought it too, and then I found it on Amazon Prime for streaming for free. But
it's my top recommendation for incredibly good television. Again, Jenny recommended it to me. She said, Steve, you got to watch this. The third season is now airing. So my box is recording season number 3 and has been. Meanwhile, I watched the first 2 seasons. Oh, goodness. I mean, I read one comment that referred to it as sort of like reminiscent of Twin Peaks without the crazy.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting because the music is sort of reminiscent. It's a murder mystery, so it has that in common with Twin Peaks. But the writing and the acting, it is spectacular. So anyway, I just wanted for people who care about my opinion on these things and have succeeded in following it in the past, The Killing on AMC is it's really good.
Yeah, it's a Danish TV show.
Well, it's based on a Danish series,
right? And
so it's a remake of.
Oh yeah. But it's from a
Yes,
Sorry,
absolutely.
It's not actually Danish.
And I ran in the mailbag a question and comment that opens up a topic that I sort of stepped into last week when you were asking me about SpinRite and Mac. And this is Stuart Rawling in Merced, California. He said, Steve, great to hear you're working on an OS X SpinRite. I have a late 2008 iMac with a failing hard disk drive that was part of a recall from Apple that I missed. I'm not sure of the exact nature of the failure the Seagate drives are having, which apparently were being recalled, but I'm suspecting that running SpinRite on level 2 may be sufficient to prolong the life of the iMac. I'm currently toying with replacing the hard disk drive with a solid-state drive, but would be willing to give any beta of SpinRite a try to see if it makes a difference before I do so. Of course, I have this fully backed up, Time Machine, Carbonite, etc., etc. I'm already a longtime owner of SpinRite and the proud owner of a hard disk drive that was previously completely recovered. And I would be more than happy to buy another copy to pay you for your additional work so that you are undertaking the additional work that you are undertaking for the Mac version. This offer stands with or without a beta. So make sure this does not go the way of CryptoLink. Cheers, Stuart. Okay, so I have a couple things to say because many people have been excited by the news of a Mac version. So first of all, there will not be a Mac version. It will just be the one SpinRite, which will now also work on the Mac. So there actually is no need for there to be a SpinRite Mac. So the good news is for people who are multi-platform, you'll be able to run it on the one version you get, you'll be able to run on everything. And that's, of course, because all I care about is the chipset, is the underlying Intel processor, which the Macs that are Intel Macs are able to operate on. So this will not work on a PowerPC Mac, and I'm sure there will never be a SpinRite for PowerPC-based Macs. But I can do it relatively easily for Intel Mac because I'm bringing my own OS along. Relative to betas and so forth, I'm going to handle this the way I did SpinRite 6, which is it's being developed right now pretty much in the open. I mean, in an open public dialogue over on GRC's news server. There's a news group, grc.spinrite.dev, and we've already got people playing with code right now. It's not SpinRite code. I just finished some code to fully enumerate the PCI bus in order to find all the mass storage controllers, because it turns out that the newer controllers have a mode of operating called AHCI, which is the Advanced Host Controller Interface. And then there's IDE and ATA and DMA and Ultra DMA and all this. So I'm working on code to begin to sort of create the low-level technology which will allow SpinRite to bypass the BIOS. And we'll have code running as I'm writing my own drivers, and this will all be tested in the open. So if anyone's interested, this is the GRC discussion groups that we've had for a decade, and there is a SpinRite development subgroup off the SpinRite group, and it's open. Anyone is willing, who is interested, is welcome to join us over there. The way I handle pre-release is that if you're an existing owner, you'll be able to use the URL that we can provide you, that we do provide you, to download your copy of SpinRite anytime, and you just change the URL and you'll be able to get pre-releases of this. I'll let people know what's going on. People in the development group will always know what's going on. But so essentially I've got the existing licensing technology, which it has been in place. We use that, for example, to allow people to download SpinRite 5 if they actually want to run it on an 8086. Because in SpinRite 6, I began using 32-bit code much more aggressively. And so we ran across people that actually still had non-386-based hardware. And it's like, oh, okay, you can have SpinRite 5. You just change the URL to a 5, and then you get a copy of SpinRite 5 using the same approach. So we'll be doing that. And therefore allowing people to play with SpinRite as it comes along. And I actually am deliberately planning several releases of SpinRite because doing the native USB support is probably going to take a lot longer. Doesn't seem to be the same uniformity in USB chips that there are in the hard drive chipset. So SpinRite 6.1 will have a whole bunch of new features, including that it'll support the Mac and support all the latest hardware, large format hard drives, UEFI file systems and BIOSes and so forth. But I'm going to deliberately not delay that in favor of working on USB. That'll be probably 6.2. We thought that 6.2 was going to be the AHCI controller, which is a far more sophisticated controller than IDE, except it turns out and this was the result of this past week's and weekends experiments, all the AHCI controllers can be told to behave as an earlier generation controller. So I'm not going to have to explicitly support AHCI nearly as soon as I thought. So the point is, since it's all going to be free, and that's the answer to Stuart's question, is I'm not going to charge anybody for this. I'm happy to do it. I'm enjoying it. I'm happy to keep SpinRite alive. And everyone has been supporting me by buying SpinRite. So this is how I return that favor, and I'm glad to do it.
Very kind, Steve.
And consequently, since it's free, I don't have to hold everything back waiting for one big release. I can release it in sort of incrementally as I get chunks of work done. And it's looking like it will be able to do, I have done a level 2 terabyte drive in 5 hours, and I'm going to be able to make it faster than that because we'll be using much larger buffers and something called extended real mode, a different way of allowing the real mode instruction set and chip to access all of the machine's memory to use 32 meg buffers rather than 32K buffers. So anyway, if anyone wants to follow along, it's grc.spinrite.dev. You do need we do not have a web browser interface. We use old school NNTP, the Network News Transfer Protocol. But for example, the Mozilla folks have an NNTP browser, and even Outlook, I think, is able to do old style news group, which is really a terrific way of operating. So that's what's going on. I'm working on it. There's no way it's going to go the way of CryptoLink. I should mention that, I stopped CryptoLink because I felt what was happening with encryption. We keep seeing there being this tension where the government is still making noises about wanting to force backdoors on any encrypted technology. And so it may well be that a commercial encrypted solution won't be viable unless it has a backdoor. And I just have no interest in doing that. So anyway, SpinRite needs some more of my time, and I'm happy to give it to it. It's all I'm working on now. So I'm really enjoying it.
I'm thrilled to hear it.
And I saw a tweet that I just wanted to comment on. Someone he said, I listened to the distributed hash table episode of Security Now, and it was an hour and a half before getting to the main topic. And so I just wanted to say, the whole podcast is the main topic. Everything we've been talking about and all of the news of the week and obviously this is a Q&A, and we're about to get to the Q&A, but this is what we're offering, not just whatever whatever we happen to be focusing on our non-Q&A weeks. So, sometimes we have a lot to talk about at the top of the show. Sometimes we don't have that much going on, so we just play it by ear. But, I know that our listeners have sent we had a lot of feedback saying they just love the whole thing. They love us talking about what's going on with a strong, sci-fi and security and science. And sometimes it's, how capacitors store charge and what supercapacitors are. We've had very popular podcasts where our top of the show stuff hasn't even been about security. So, that's what we do. And I think we're largely giving people what they want.
And I might point out that there is something called a fast forward button on almost all podcast players. And I won't spank you if you fast forward. It's quite all right. So you can go to any part of the podcast at any time. Just think of it as an extra jam-packed, full of goodness show, and listen to the parts you like.
Yeah.
I don't even understand why somebody would complain that it's an hour and a half. I don't even understand that. Just go to where you want it to begin.
Yeah.
Which is very odd to me. It's like, I was forced to listen for 90 minutes. I don't understand. Go get some fresh air, kid.
Yeah, I think he actually likes the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. It cracks me up. Now, on the other hand, if you're watching live, you're stuck. That's why we want you to watch live. You have to watch, and you have to listen to the commercials, and I don't think that's a problem at all. We're going to give you some questions and some answers in just a second, but we do want to mention our great sponsor, Carbonite. A great time to have a backup. Now, I know you say the government's backing it up, but go ahead and try to get it out of the NSA. Go ahead. Yeah, so Carbonite...
They'll deny it, Leo. They'll deny
say,
it.
No, we don't.
We know they
I don't
will.
know what you're talking about. You know, one of the nice things about Carbonite, we're talking about it a lot, but this audience, I can get a little deeper. And Steve did a analysis of all the cloud storage and backup solutions. One of the good things about Carbonite, it's one of the few that has TNO encryption. Now, I should point out, you lose some features inevitably anytime you do TNO because only you have the key. So there are some things you can't do. For instance, if you don't turn on TNO encryption, Carbonite will let you access your data from anywhere by logging on to any Carbonite account or on your smartphone. They have free apps and stuff, but that doesn't work if you've fully encrypted it. You can't see the individual files. However, if privacy is important to you, Carbonite does give you that capability. I think that's really, really important. What is Carbonite? Well, it's automatic, continuous, online backup. Whenever you're connected to the internet, Carbonite is backing up, does not slow you down. It's very careful not to get in your way, does not slow down your internet access. It waits till you're idle, and then it trickles your stuff up to the internet. Especially good and especially important for small businesses that don't have a backup strategy. It is not enough. Okay, say you're a mom and pop shop. You got a computer in the back. It's got your customer lists, your receivables, your suppliers. All of that's on the computer. And you feel good because you're backing it up. You got an external drive sitting right there. What if the store burns down? Now, admittedly, that's going to put you out of business for a little bit, but you don't want it to put you out of business forever. And if you don't have access to your customer list, your receivable, your suppliers, not only are you out of business, you're losing a lot of money. Carbonite makes sure that if that's what backup's about, disaster planning. If the worst happens, your stuff is still safe up in the cloud, and that is so important. Start your free trial today at Carbonite.com, PC or Mac. For a single computer, $59 a year, but small businesses, they've got plans that give you the same flat rate, unlimited backup. It's secure, it's automatic, it's very affordable. And I want you to try it right now. You get 2 weeks free. You don't need a credit card. You just need our offer code. One word, security now. That's it. All you need is one word, security now, no credit card. If you decide to buy, they're going to give you 2 bonus months with purchase. 14 months for the price of 12. Look at their plans. Pick the plan you want. Do the 2-week trial. I think on the business plans, they give you a month trial. And be happy. Don't worry. Relax. Sleep well at night because your stuff is safe. Carbonite.com. It's better than the NSA because you can encrypt it. Nobody can see it. All right. Are you ready for some questions? And by the way, we thank them for their support of security now. You ready for some questions, Steve?
You bet.
Let's see here. Question numero uno comes to us from Chiang Mai, Thailand. Wow, that's cool. Bill Dom wonders about DNS order of precedence. Oh, this is a good question.
Yeah.
Could you explain the order of precedence in determining the application of DNS settings? Which of these 3, the OS on the computer, the modem settings, or the router setting, gets to call the shots as far as DNS is concerned? My setup is as follows. I have both a Mac desktop and a MacBook Air. I also have a CP-Link modem and an Apple Airport Express Wi-Fi router. I have a single Ethernet connection between the modem and the router, so both of my computers utilize the Wi-Fi connection. I can see DNS settings in each of these configurations. The question is, which one should I be using to control my DNS settings? Maybe not even that, but which one will the computer use? I'm not sure if I can change the DNS setting. I haven't tried, though. I see that they're in the configuration settings of the modem since it was supplied by my ISP. If I can't, is it game over? If I can, and I know I can change the network setting on my Macs, of course, on my Airport Express, where would be the best place to do this? This is a great question. You know, I'll add to this because I just got the new Airport Extreme router from Apple, the 802.11ac version. And I took that as an opportunity to put OpenDNS in my DNS settings in the router. I've always used DHCP on the computer, so I know at least the computer's not overruling it. But he raises a good question. What if you have a router that's supplied by your cable company and it has its own settings?
So, okay. In Bill's case, what he described to us was sort of a 3 links in the chain, right? He's got a modem and then a router and then his computer. The way to think, I think the best way to conceptualize this is as sort of a, I don't know, like a waterfall or a linked chain. The idea is that if you leave everything alone in its everything in there sort of the default, the DNS servers are provided by the ISP. And so when devices get turned on, the device nearest the ISP asks the ISP for its information. And this uses a protocol called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So the device closest to the ISP says, hi, what should I use for my IP? What should I use for my DNS settings? And, is there anything else I need to know? And so the sort of the furthest away entity, the ISP, provides that to the next closest to you device. And then, in turn, the next closer device says to that one, asks the same question. Hi there, what should I use for my IP? What should I use for my DNS settings? And so that device gets them from the one next upstream in the direction of the ISP. And similarly, when you turn your computer on, it says to your router, which is typically the thing the computer's connecting to, hi there, what should I use for my IP and what should I use for my DNS? So it's sort of a hierarchy of the same question being asked each stage up the chain. Now, again, if everything is left alone, then the typical default is to ask for your IP and ask for your DNS settings. And that's probably across the world what the vast majority of systems are doing. But our listeners know, for example, they say, well, my ISP's got really slow DNS servers. I want to use OpenDNS. So they know that they can change, in Windows it's called obtain DNS settings automatically, or, I will provide the DNS settings. And the Apple certainly has the same ability to override the automatic sort of waterfall of the DNS settings coming from each level down to the lower level. You can say, no, I don't want the automatic ones. I'm going to put in my own. Now, you could do that on each computer, and then the computers would ignore what the router was saying. Or if you are able, and Bill wasn't sure he was, but he saw these settings in the router, if your router lets you change them there, then the benefit is you don't have to also change them on all of your computers. That is, you've sort of stopped the waterfall higher up in that chain, and then everything downstream of that point where you say, don't be automatic, don't accept the setting from who's upstream, I'm going to override it at this stage in this hierarchy, in this chain, and then everybody below will use those. So, for example, if the modem allows you to set those, then that is set the DNS, then the router would ask the modem and it would get the ones you set. Then your computers would ask the router and they would get the ones you set. So I think that's really the best way to think about it, is that when everything's automatic, those settings propagate from the ISP all the way down to the computer. And anywhere in that chain, you can say, oops, stop listening, stop asking upstream. I'm going to tell you the answer I want for everything downstream. And so there's a sort of a comprehensive answer to that question.
Good. Easy enough.
Oh, and my goodness, I just saw the name on question number 2. Have you seen the video, Leo?
I did.
Oh,
so
Lord.
Weird. He has turned. He's turned into the 2.5 Men guy. Winning.
Okay.
blessedly blanked his name out. Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. Now, okay, so we can't air it on the podcast.
Oh, it's full of profanity and sexuality, and we're talking about John McAfee. By the way, the one good thing about that video is I now know how to pronounce McAfee.
Although he doesn't tell us how to spell it. Although we do know how to pronounce it.
Right,
yes,
right.
He says it's not McAfee. It's McAfee.
McAfee.
Yes. Now,
and it is him, by the way, and it's just weird. He does a video on how to uninstall McAfee. He says, I wrote this great program, this simple little program 15 years ago. I haven't had anything to do with it in 15 years. In fact, IBM owns it now, I think. Or no, I'm sorry, Intel owns it now. But so he cashed out 15 years ago. And so he says, but I keep getting email all the time from people saying, how do I uninstall McAfee? There are scantily clad women, much of profanity. There's a fake nerd who supposedly is telling you.
There's a face full of cocaine.
No, it's not cocaine. You'll notice the soap, the bath salts boxes.
I saw that.
That's what he was into, was inventing this new thing called bath salts. And he gets high in it, and eventually there's lots of guns, and eventually he shoots the computer and says, that's how you uninstall.
But it is the most bizarre thing.
It's not funny, I don't think, but lots of people found it funny. I thought it was. We shared
the bizarre adventures in Belize and his blog that he was doing for a while, where it was just stranger than truth. But
he's Charlie Sheen. He's become Charlie Sheen.
So it's
winning
for people who think they might enjoy what Leo just described. It's really, you have to see it. It's bizarre.
It's on YouTube, and you can search for YouTube, John McAfee.
Yep, John McAfee.
He's got his own channel.
Wow. Well, maybe there's more. So our listener said, John, my name is, this is John McAfee, and he says, no relation, thank God. And this was, maybe this was after the video. Maybe you knew about the video. I don't know.
You don't have to. No. Actually, in some ways, he's more coherent than I thought he would be, McAfee.
Yes, I agree. It's like, okay, well, I mean, he's very serious.
And at least is making fun of himself a little bit, I think. It's hard to tell.
I found myself thinking, I actually spoke with that guy on the phone once. It's like,
did you really? Because that was a different guy.
Because I was writing the InfoWorld column, and I made up 3 columns about the theory of viruses, and he assumed I had them. So he wanted copies of mine. He wanted to exchange them. And I said, I'm sorry, John, I just if I'm a programmer, and in the same way that I know how I would, bug companies if the NSA told me to, I know how I would write viruses if someone told me to. There's only one way you do these things, or the best way you do them. And so he was disappointed he couldn't get copies of viruses from me. This is back when he was actually writing, antivirus software. I don't know if he was ever actually a programmer.
I don't know either.
I don't think he's a code.
I think he's a business guy. Yeah, I don't really know. Woo. Supposedly, he started writing this to target a specific virus at his place of employ, and it became an application. But I don't know.
Well,
I've read the Wikipedia article. That's who knows how accurate or whether he's gotten into it or not. I know he's gotten into the bath salts. So this John McAfee of Oakland, who's no relation, and probably
our John McAfee.
He probably pronounces it McAfee, just to be different.
Say, oh my God.
Yeah, Stephen Leo, fascinating podcast last week, the best one ever. But you never told us where Zeta fits in with Mega, Giga, and Tera. let me see if I know. It's there's a megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, what's after terabyte? Petabyte.
Yes.
Exabyte.
Yes.
Is it Zettabyte next?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's Zettabyte, isn't there?
No, there's Yoda.
Yodabyte. That's it. Yodabyte. Okay.
So we know Mega, Giga, and Tera.
Right.
And so each of these is 10 to the third. So or comma 00 in English notation. So we all know a terabyte is like, now big drives have terabyte size platters. So, and the reason this came up is that the NSA storage facility outside of Utah will be able to store 5 zettabytes of data. So that is 5 billion terabytes.
5 billion terabytes.
5 billion terabytes.
So you know that terabyte drive, or maybe you have a 3 terabyte drive. You're like living large in your computer.
Yeah.
Imagine several billion of those. Wow, billion, not zillion.
5 billion terabytes.
You can find, of course, Wikipedia has all of the definitions if you really wanted to know. So let me just, and by the way, if you go the other direction,
you mean micro,
nano, micro, and all of that. There's a whole thing for that too.
Yeah, milli, micro, nano,
I don't know
pico.
Pico, that's right.
Yeah.
I don't know what's after that. So
really small, really tiny.
There's IEC binary preferences too, which are different.
Oh, God.
It's a
really?
Yeah, a kibibyte.
Oh,
and a megabyte, and a gigabyte, and a tebabyte, and a petabyte.
Well, and the other problem is there's always been this: is it 1,000 or is it 1024?
Is it binary or is it?
Yeah. And some of the, I mean, there's been some controversy with like hard drives because they just squeaked out all zeros. They weren't able to squeak out the 1024 binary size K.
Right.
They used the decimal size K. It's like, okay, well, that's cheating, but maybe not. I don't know.
I'm pleased that I was actually able to remember that order.
Very good job.
I forgot kilobyte, which is where it all begins at byte, kilobyte, and then on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good question. How many libraries of Congress? Now, I don't know how big the Library of Congress is. Somebody told me once 7 terabytes. So if it's roughly 1 billion Library of Congresses. 1 billion Library of Congresses. 1 billion in that.
Yeah.
Yow.
Of like nonsense. I mean,
that's
like
the other thing. It's not
just crap. It's just crap.
Yeah.
It's just like we're going to record all the noise on the internet.
Yeah.
And
good luck.
Then we'll filter through it.
That's to me, that's hubris. That's overweening pride. We do it because we can. Jerry Siebrechts in Belgium wonders, is SSL secure if the certificate authorities cooperate? Steve, thanks for your podcast about Prism. Very informative. I can imagine how people outside of the U.S. must feel about this. Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
One thing I was wondering, and maybe it's my lack of understanding of SSL speaking here, why SSL offers any protection at all? Wouldn't it be possible for the government to get the private key from the certificate authority and decrypt the traffic when they splice it? Suddenly, JavaScript-based encryption doesn't seem so crazy to me anymore. And along with that comes Jimmy Anderson from Sweden. What an international show we have here today. Wondering about SSL encryption. Thanks for your great podcast. What would happen if the NSA got a copy, for example, of a Facebook's SSL certificate? Wouldn't they be able to decrypt all the traffic into and out of Facebook?
Now, these, I think, are very important questions. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the protocol of SSL, because it is secure against eavesdropping, even if you have keys. And that's important. So the keys, the public keys that these questions are worried about are used for authentication. And let's remember that. Authentication only proves that you're talking to who you believe you are. It is the authentication that prevents the man-in-the-middle attack, where somebody intercepts the traffic and then can view it and alter it and then send it on. So authentication is separate from privacy. We need to keep those two things separate because they're cryptographically almost unrelated to each other. You can easily have one without the other, is my point. Now, the way the SSL protocol works is it is secure against eavesdropping, meaning, and we've talked about this many times, each side generates a pseudo-random number that's with high level of entropy, so it cannot be guessed. And it was because some random number generators used to be poor that that was an SSL vulnerability that eavesdroppers could take advantage of. We've solved those problems long ago. So they each they each generate a random number, and they send a derivative of what they each generate to each other. And when through that exchange and then combining it with the information they did not disclose, they each are able to arrive at the same private key, the same symmetric key, which is then used for the crypto. The point is, though, nobody monitoring, nobody who is a passive eavesdropper gains any useful information from that. So that's key. So as long as the conversation is eavesdropped on and not intercepted, we're okay. Now, as far as we know, this is all passive eavesdropping. The technology that we believe they're using for hardware, the concept of a fiber optic splitter, then this is all passive monitoring. And boy, it really, I mean, that's caused enough trouble. Can you imagine if the government were actually intercepting connections and performing man-in-the-middle attack? But that said, it is chilling, I think, to recognize the legal authority that the U.S. intelligence agencies have been given to compel private commercial entities to divulge information on the grounds that it's required for national security, and those agencies are prohibited from disclosing that. Now, of course, in the news since, there's been a lot of conversation about these agencies really pleading for the government to let them talk about the national security letters that they've been receiving. And I know that that's been a focus of yours too, Leo, for some time. I mean, that aspect of it. But also remember that a certificate authority never receives the private key of the entity whose certificate they're signing. They're signing the public key to say, yes, we're asserting with our certificate authority integrity that this public key belongs to, for example, Facebook. They never see or get the private key. Facebook, well, because they don't need it. Facebook holds on to that very closely, and in fact, it's Facebook's private key that allows them to make their assertion on the incoming in the other direction that they are Facebook, because nobody has Facebook's private key. It never needs to leave Facebook's control. Now, Jimmy, the second question said, well, what if the NSA got Facebook's private key? Well, then they could pretend to be Facebook. I mean, they would be Facebook for all intents and purposes. And that's been we've talked over the years about various private key leakages which have occurred. And, the industry immediately reacts. All the browsers instantly revoke those certificates. I mean, Google, because it's open source in the Chrome browser, we see the list of absolutely assertively revoked certificates. Never allow any of the following certificates to be regarded as secure. Microsoft has a certificate manager, and you can see in there a list of revoked certificates. DigiNotar is famously there, and even embarrassingly some Microsoft certificates that have in the past have gotten loose, which are affirmatively revoked. So Jory finishes saying, suddenly JavaScript-based encryption encryption doesn't seem so crazy to me anymore. And I would say, for listeners to our podcast, what we've always been talking about, pre-internet encryption, means you're not only relying on your connection security, you are relying on encryption that you control absolutely with a long private key that that isn't relying on any other entity. And ultimately, I think that's where we come back to. This Threema instant messaging client, THREEMA, looks really interesting to me. I think they've really done it right. They have varying levels of security, and they grade the security that you've established with the other endpoint. And for example, the highest level of security you get when you put your phones together and they scan each other's barcode, physically being in proximity in order to perform the secure endpoint negotiation they need in order to never have had this information go through a non-secure channel. It's going visibly through the air only when these phones are together. Anyway, I'm hoping that they're going to be adding more support, as I said. But this is an important question. I think it absolutely puts a chill on the whole. I mean, all of this, what we've learned about the depths to which the NSA has obtained authority, and I put those in air quotes, and the weakness of the public key infrastructure from certificate authorities up, and what it is that they may be compelled to divulge, and the fact that we know we've been relying on a system which is requires absolute security, absolute watchfulness, which the bad guys have wanted to penetrate and have successfully penetrated. Unfortunately, maybe it's not just the bad guys. I mean, I'm not doing conspiracy theories here or anything, and I think it would be very difficult to imagine that it would be possible for law enforcement to make a case that they should get access to the public key infrastructure. But we also know that they're really, really unhappy that, as they say, the internet is going dark. And we've got some questions that highlight that aspect of it that we'll be getting to here next. So, their answer to being unhappy is generally to solve that problem.
Right.
It's like, oh, great.
Jason in Texas says, NSA spying, how can I protect myself? I've been listening to the show for a long time, and from everything I've learned from you, I have many ideas about what I could do to protect myself. But I'm hoping you'll talk about this present instance in particular. What are your thoughts on combining VPN with Tor, VPN before Tor or after Tor, or even is it a good idea to combine VPN with Tor? Go ahead, Tor.
Yeah, and this is representative of many questions that I saw, so I just chose Jason's. The thing that stood out here is that there are many VPN providers that will not let you use Tor for whatever reason. I don't know what their logic is. The Tor network doesn't prohibit you from doing anything you want to. So the VPN, in order for a VPN to block you, you'd be connecting to their server, and then their VPN server would have to refuse to allow you to then run through the Tor network. Turning this around, if you use Tor first, then you'd come out of the Tor network and attempt to connect to the VPN server. And so again, the VPN provider would have to be refusing to accept a connection out of a Tor endpoint. I have heard anecdotal reports that people have had problems using both a VPN and Tor through some policy-based blocking on the VPN side. I just haven't pursued it any further because it felt a little bit, tinfoil hat to me, though I can recognize someone's concern. From a broader basis, Jason is saying, how can I protect myself from the NSA spying? And I don't have a good answer. I mean, I don't think you can. I think one of the takeaways from last week's podcast was, and the reason we did it, I mean, the reason what we try to offer here is the technology and the solutions that technology implies, and solutions that are available thanks to the technology. We just looked at the possible compromise of the public key infrastructure. No, I mean, it seems very unlikely to me, but it's possible. And unfortunately, one of the things we always see is what is possible ends up happening. So this is why I don't think it's safe any longer to rely on SSL for privacy. This is why I've been saying pre-internet encryption. There, the notion was not to trust the link and not to trust the cloud storage provider, only trust yourself, or TNO, trust no one. Unfortunately, I think to a larger degree than has been felt previously, that the TNO really needs to extend now to the public key infrastructure, because it does rely on us trusting certificate authorities and on what they're doing.
Now,
so, how do you protect yourself? I think you just need to you have to assume that unless you control the crypto, it's not in your control.
Well, and even that might not be sufficient because of the metadata. So, for instance,
very good point. Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can encrypt email till the cows come home. In fact, it's very easy to install GNU Privacy Guard, which is an open source PGP implementation that's excellent and simple and trivial. It's very easy to install on the Mac and Mac Mail and use it. But they can still see who I'm sending stuff to and when and how often. They could see who that person sends stuff to.
I think that Silent Circle may be preventing this, and I think that Threema may also be. The point is they're using, rather than doing peer-to-peer, the problem with peer-to-peer is it leaves metadata.
Right.
The only way to prevent metadata is to have a metadata provider. Have a connectivity provider who is specifically against spying. One of these, and we get to a question about it later. Oh, it's the Whisper guy. We already know that that's Moxie Marlinspike.
Right.
Well, I would deeply trust Moxie.
Yeah.
Yes. His whole business model, and was he Silent Circle? I can't remember which was which.
I think he was Silent Circle. Was Phil Zimmerman was involved in that one. That's the PGP guy.
But so anyway, the idea is if everybody connects to a central hub, and I do know that I just read when I was looking at Threema, they arbitrarily pad the message length with a pseudo-random nonsense and length, so that in order to prevent the association to identify packets by size, as for example they move through Tor. So there really are some good technologies, and I have a feeling we'll be focusing on these in coming weeks. The types of technologies that really are going to the next level to thwart passive eavesdropping and both metadata and privacy violation. It's certainly not easy. I mean, it's really it ups the ante.
Yeah, I mean, so I can encrypt, and so one would want to encrypt one's data before one puts it on the internet. Post pre-internet encryption, or PI. But then one would also want to hide the transactions themselves. So that would mean using something like Silent Circle. And then finally, one should throw away one's cell phone, because there's no way to prevent that if you're going to be on a network, unless somebody comes along and provides a Silent Circle-like cell phone network.
Someone did mention that in addition to connection metadata, companies were keeping like dynamic cell phone tower presence metadata.
Location.
But I don't know that like all like right now I'm a Verizon user. Does Verizon's like caring where I am unless they don't need to specifically look?
No, they totally store that.
Oh. That's bad.
That's the pen register stuff.
That means that they can unwind the history of your location all the way back in time.
Right. So don't carry a cell phone.
Goodness. Or just keep it turned off. Well, no, because then when you turn it off, they'll
don't carry it.
Yeah.
You can't have it. So a pen register is this whole idea of there is no warrant necessary to request location data from a cell provider. And in fact,
wait, location history also?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure they're saving all of that.
That's just a lot of data. But on the other hand, we have 5 zettabytes. It's got to go somewhere. Wow, it's like where everybody is all the time.
Yeah,
is what this means.
Well, what that would be is a request to Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. Would you mind keeping that for some length of time? And we'll just come and we'll fetch it. You don't have to keep it longer than how often we visit.
Well, business records. I mean, that's the whole deal. Is
business records, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they've been saying all along that is for sure there. But you're nuts if you think you're private in any way if you carry a cell phone.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, actually, I will say that I've got apps that keep asking to turn on location data, and I just say no. I mean, I'm not a map user, so I don't need everything I don't want, my location being tweeted out whenever I tweet something. It's like, no. I just
see. I guess this is the point that I've always made, which is, people are so worried about Google and Facebook and other people knowing where you are, and that seems to me, I mean, that's for commerce. I don't really worry about that. I'm much more worried about the fact that the government and law enforcement at all levels are able to get this data, able to store it, able to use it against you in the future. It's pre-crime.
Yeah.
So let's say they arrest me someday for, something, and they say, we got to build a case against this guy because this case is weak. Now they go and they request all the things I've done for years, and they sift through it. And they look for, it's a federal crime. It's a felony to violate a website's terms of service. That's a federal crime.
What?
Yeah.
A felony?
Yeah.
My goodness.
So there's plenty. We are all committing felonies all the time. Have you ever signed up for the kids who sign up for a Facebook account and they aren't 13 yet, that's a felony. So go back through that stuff, find all these little ridiculous things, and
wait a minute. Is ad blocking violating their terms of service?
I bet it is.
I'll bet. Oh, great. Yeah, okay. Let's just take us away. Just, put our wrists together.
That's the, by the way, that's,
wow.
And I should point out, that's the Justice Department's interpretation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act.
Well, and that's, of course, what the intelligence agencies would ask.
Well, and that's what they were getting Aaron Swartz on. Aaron Schwartz's prosecution was based on his violation of the terms of service of that database that he downloaded. So, yeah. So the point being that I think if they have enough data about what you do, they can find stuff. They can build a case against you. So it's really a question of, do they want to build a case against you or not?
Right. Yep.
And one of the reasons they say they explicitly say the reason we save this data is so we can build a case against you. Should we want to go get you someday? So you just really have to trust them. So in other words, I don't care if I'll turn on location on Path and Google and Foursquare. I'm not worried about them. It's the feds you worry about, and they don't need you to say yes.
Yeah.
They got it all. Feds, local, whoever. Chill in Washington, D.C.
Perfectly timed name.
Yeah. Senator Chill. A couple of comments about Prism. First, good catch on the importance of metadata. You missed one crucial detail. Frequency. Cell phones need to send keep alive messages to the tower every minute or so to keep registered.
This was perfectly timed.
And let the network know they're still alive. Location, data, and other info are included in these Keep Alive messages, so they have more location data just than when you make or receive a call. Yeah, we've known that. Second, the device used on the AT&T network over in San Francisco was a Narus Insight Manager, now known as Narus End System. We've talked about that.
Yep.
And we mentioned the Prism graphic. The original brochures have been replaced with something much less informative. The old ones showed something like Wireshark on custom ASICs capable of deep packet inspection in real time on a 10 gigabyte, what's a GBE link?
10 gigabit link, Ethernet link.
Ethernet. 10 gigabit Ethernet link with room to spare. That was 7 years ago. Penultimately, how about putting a shout out to the audience to see who can come up with a tool to rid ourselves once and for all of the Hong Kong post office in their ilk? My idea is a programmer plugin that keeps a log of root signers of every certificate your browser encounters, find out who's needed in the root list and who isn't, then just delete the latter from our certificate stores. Maybe a place to submit lists and create a map of certificates in their signing trees. Finally, correcting an error. You said when an email server sends mail via SMTP, it is in the clear. That isn't always true. SMTP over SSL TLS is RFC 2487, posted back in 1999. That means SMTP to SMTP server communications can be set to opportunistic to happen when the destination server supports it, or required for people really paranoid. Required is a configuration used by many government agencies when sending mail in order to other government destinations, .gov destinations. All SMTP communications between the various .gov servers are encrypted using TLS. I bet you that's about the only place it's used, but thanks for educating the masses on the importance of security.
So yes, starting from that issue, there is a protocol called Start TLS,
right,
which was added to SMTP. The problem is, unless, for example, you can mandate that all .gov, exactly as you said, Leo, SMTP servers are going to only exchange email that way, you can't exchange email with the rest of the world. And, you know, my email server that GRC is using is state-of-the-art, very recent, does not offer that even as an option. So it's still not there. I do use SSL for all, and that's one of the reasons I set it up. We've got secure connections for all of our client, you know, myself, Greg, and Sue. All of our connections to our own server are absolutely SSL, but the SMTP to SMTP, as I said last week, when the email from us leaves our server and goes elsewhere, it cannot be SSL. I mean, maybe some percentage, but you cannot require it. And for example, I can't receive it because my state-of-the-art SMTP server doesn't even offer that as an option. So it actually has not happened effectively in the real world yet. And this note that he has about certificate stores, there's an interesting technology that changed with Vista that never received much attention. Vista had it, and Windows 7 has it. Server 2003, I think, has it, but I'm not sure. It may not. But I know that 2008 has it because I encountered it. And that is the Vista OS that everyone is using, and Windows 7 OS and GRC server, and I'm not sure how far back it goes, they don't come out of the box with the entire every certificate authority you ever heard of, Hong Kong Post Office and Company certificates. They start with about 12. And it's a little bit of a concern, actually, because when the server encounters an SSL connection that is anchored in a certificate authority whose certificate it doesn't already have, it goes and asks Microsoft.
Give me a certificate. Hey, what do you got?
Yeah.
You know these Hong Kong guys? Who are they?
And unfortunately, this means that Microsoft indirectly is able to monitor all of their Vista and Windows 7 and late model server connections for which certificate authorities they have ever asked for certificates from. Now, if that annoys you, you can download the master pack, which is like 400 and some certificate authorities, and not use this dynamic approach. But the default from Vista on on the consumer Windows and 7 and 8, and also on 2008 and on, and I think an earlier version, but I don't remember where that started on the servers. It is to ask for certificates on the fly. So you still end up with a well-populated store. It just takes a while as that sort of matures. And then, of course, the rate at which you're asking for ones you don't have drops off because you end up with a large collection. But nicely, only the ones you've actually needed to use, not the whole kitchen sink collection. So a bunch of good points there. Thank you.
And are we still really worried about Hong Kong when you could worry about Washington, D.C.?
It's Hong Kong's benign. That's where Edward
Snowden is.
That's where Snowden went.
Hong Kong's the new freedom.
The protection of Hong Kong.
The new, where was it Humphrey Bogart was going? The new Free French resistance. Greg in Kansas wonders, iMessage and FaceTime secure from NSA snooping? He quotes an Ars Technica article, which probably refers back to the Apple post, but we'll see. Does iMessage utilize pre-internet encryption like LastPass does? If so, should be secure from NSA snooping, as Apple claims. But who holds the keys? Apple? And Dustin Shum in Michigan, who wonders somewhat similarly to Apple, can Apple or cannot Apple decrypt our iMessages? In the privacy statement Apple posted on its website just this week, they say they can't decrypt iMessages. While it may be end-to-end encryption, how can they provide history to new devices if they don't have the key to decrypt? When you put a new device on iMessages, it has all the old messages on there. I would guess that when I sign in with a new device, I download the key, and my new device is now able to decrypt the messages. Apple probably hasn't given any technical explanation, but Steve, do you know how it could even possibly work without Apple being able to decrypt my data?
No, I don't. And this brings up, I think, the next point, Leo. I'm finding myself strongly leaning in the direction you've always been, which is if it's not open source, we really can't trust it. And that's the problem with iMessage. One of the things we know, because the protocol is closed, but there was a researcher who installed it, like an early version of it, or I don't remember quite what the scenario was, but there was an iMessage on his Mac OS X system, and because he was a developer and had the tools, and it was on a Mac platform that he had access to, he was able to do a lot of reverse engineering. And I remember looking at the protocol, and I've just made your eyes cross. It was unbelievably complicated.
Kind of not so good either, right? I mean, kind of like convoluted.
Yeah, that's a problem with crypto. The more complicated it is, the more opportunities there are for mistakes. And it doesn't have to be complex anymore. We know how to solve these problems easily. So Apple's iMessage protocol is proprietary. They're needing to assure people that they're safe. Well, it uses end-to-end encryption, they say, and I believe them. But unfortunately, apparently it's also stored, and so we assume it's stored in encrypted format. Yet somehow, as has been observed many times, you bring a new device online and it receives your iMessage history. Well, is it coming from other devices? Is it coming from Apple?
It says they say specifically Apple cannot decrypt that data. Yet magically unencrypted data appears on my new MacBook Air when I log into iMessages. This Air doesn't have any previous keys. Right. Maybe the key is stored in my Apple account, because you do have to log in. Now, I think this might make sense. I have to log into my Apple iCloud account to use this machine. I have to associate messages with that.
Yes.
So perhaps there's a key there Apple doesn't have access to.
So assume we could try to engineer a solution by saying that the end user has to provide authentication for his iCloud account, which Apple does not have. Apple has presumably hashed everything.
Right.
So
that would make sense. You could do that.
So the hash, yes. So but again, okay, yes. So Apple hashes everything. They can verify your information, but they cannot recreate your information, your authentication information. And so they've designed a system where you must authenticate yourself, and when you do, that authentication is used to decrypt your iMessage store and to then repopulate a new device's iMessage history. And so, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not trusting it, not given what we know. I'm not trusting it because it's not open.
Right.
I'm not trusting anything now, a messaging system that large corporate entities like Apple are hosting. Unfortunately, the good news is there are alternatives. We'll be talking about them, I have a feeling, a lot more in the future. But we know that the FBI, NSA, CIA, whomever, is able to now compel Apple to divulge information. And Apple's not telling us how their systems work. They're closed protocol. As far as I'm concerned, that rules them out in us considering them sufficiently safe. When there are free, known open protocol alternatives.
Like CryptoCat.
Yes.
This
like
doesn't in any way compromise CryptoCat.
Like Silent Circle, like what we're going to be talking about here in the next question.
Our final question, Dennis Downing Jr., Staten Island, New York. He wonders specifically about TextSecure. It's from a company called Whisper Systems. First off, I don't know if I could get by in life without your show. I've listened to every episode at least twice. You and Leo do an extraordinary job. The shows are very informative and exciting for me. Hope many more years of podcasts to come. Wow, that's nice. Thank you. I have an Android phone. There is a free app called TextSecure. It gives you end-to-end encryption with text messages. I've been using it for a while. It looks like it might do the trick. I wanted a professional opinion, if you wouldn't mind. They have another app called Red Phone. Oh, I have Red Phone. I'm familiar with that. Does the same thing with voice calls, from what I understand. I've noticed that the downloads of these apps have soared since the NSA news came out. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that using the apps may be a solution. I must say, if this is truly an app that works, anyone, and I mean anyone, can use it. It's super easy. You press a lock on top of the text message interface. It initiates key exchanges automatically. There's also an option for you to verify keys with the recipient. I would assume to make sure there's no funny business with the man in the middle. If you could touch on this app in your show, if it works, I think it'd be an amazing benefit to anyone who uses it. It's whispersystems.org.
And that is Moxie Marlin Spike's app and his company.
And as we've said, and I'm glad you've come around on this one, because I know when we first started this show, I've always said I don't use encryption that's not open source. And I think you now agree.
I do. Well, I wanted to do a commercial one.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be open source. And now it's like, okay, I'm not doing a commercial one.
It has to be open source. And this is on GitHub. Whisper Systems has posted the source code. So that means you can validate it. You can.
So he has two platforms. Right now it appears to be, two apps. This is Moxie does. And his whole deal is we can make encryption, absolutely unbustable encryption, easy to use while absolutely secure. So this is Android platform only at the moment, but two apps, one for text and one for voice. Red Phone is similarly Android to Android audio encryption, courtesy of Whisper Systems and Moxie Marlin Spike. I will dig deeper into them in the future, I am sure, and look at, for example, how does it provide metadata protection? I am absolutely sure that they've solved the problem of privacy and authentication.
But the problem with metadata is if you're doing it over a cell phone, well, of course, the metadata about the transaction is still visible, as always. I see an iOS source code repository, so there may be an iOS version of TextSecure. We'll have to look
Now,
and see.
I guess one of the things you could do with a cell phone is you are able to put it in airplane mode or turn the cellular modem off.
What you need is a burner that's not associated to you. You need to go to the drugstore, pay cash.
Well, or use Wi-Fi instead of cellular.
I have a feeling Wi-Fi would be just as bad. The problem is if you're okay. So this phone, if I'm not on the cellular network at all, I guess I'm okay. But if I'm on the cellular network and I use Wi-Fi, the cellular network still sees the location data from the Wi-Fi. Yes. So you have to really. I think the best thing is you need a phone that's not associated with you. But as we know, that's the problem with metadata. Is it only takes a few data points to start being able to figure out who's whom. Yeah. But that's why drug dealers throw their burner phones out every week.
Do they?
Yeah. According to The Wired, yes. Have you seen The Wire? Have you watched that show?
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? Oh, wow. Yes.
That's where I learned everything I know about drug dealing and burner phones.
Okay. We're glad for that. What we need is there was
Remember they sent bubs all over town buying burner phones? Yeah. All right.
Of course. The Wire's spectacular HBO series. The thing we need, there was a neat privacy guy who he objected to the idea that the supermarkets were using the little loyalty tabs. And so whenever he was in line in the supermarket, he would exchange them with the other people in line just to sort of scramble up the database.
There you go.
So what we need is a burner phone interchange system where every week a bunch of people get together and in a big circle and they hand their phone to the person on the left.
And make sure there's no cameras taking pictures of who's going in and going out.
Exactly. And then you all disperse. And that'll just scramble up the database.
I'm just going to tell you, once this paranoia begins, it's turtles all the way down. There's no end point where you go, now I'm safe. Steve Gibson does his best, though, to protect us. And, the most important thing is to understand what's going on, what the risks are. And I hope surface this conversation.
And I should be wearing tinfoil.
I wear tinfoil hat in the last twit.
I saw you. Great.
We got to get you on Twit. In fact, I've been meaning to get you on. I don't know what you do Sunday afternoons.
I'm available.
I'll have Chad give you a hingle.
Okay.
Steve Gibson is the guy in charge of security now. Every Wednesday he comes on here, and it's rapidly becoming a must-listen show for anybody who wants to understand this stuff.
It's like this, like what you just heard.
Yeah. Only more.
Yeah.
We will be doing this next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC, right here. So tune in live. But if you like to fast forward through the boring bits, you can always download on-demand audio and video after the fact. Now, Steve has the teensy-weeniest audio, which is the 16 kilobit version on his site, grc.com. He also has transcripts, which make it very easy to fast forward.
And I have to say, the transcripts for last week's episode 408, they're just wonderful because you can quickly scroll by and see where there's a big blob where I'm talking nonstop. Right. It's like, here's Steve talking about something.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the little, they should make me red. And then the little black, red. That's grc.com. While you're there, if you've got a question, grc.com/feedback. Pick up a copy of SpinRite. Free upgrades forever guaranteed by Mr. Gibson. So don't say, I'm going to wait for the next. No. Get it now. You need it now. You should also get all the freebies, including.
And actually, if you get it now, you can play with the pre-release versions, too. So
you can?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There you go. That's a good reason to go to grc.com. You just have to hack the URL. No, just add a 6, right? grc.com.
We'll provide instructions.
There'll be a link there, I think.
There will.
Thank you, Steve. What a great show, as always. My level of interest is rising as the government's level of interest in us is rising.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve, and we'll see you next time on Security Now.
Thanks, Leo.
Security Now.